Episode number two. Episode number two. Welcome. Welcome back to our second episode. Hey Frank, it's been a hot minute. And by that I mean it's been exactly 6 days. Still super nervous sitting in front of a camera. Still don't know how to talk. Have very little idea about how to do things. Hell, I'm even at the point where I don't know what to talk about. So I figured, let's talk about things I know. Maybe. So I wanted to talk to you today, Frank, about wrestling. I wanted to tell you how I got into wrestling, why I care about wrestling, and throw out some recommendations that maybe you haven't seen before, or just something that I think would really get you into it. I'm looking all over the place. So, where did we start looking at wrestling? Now, growing up through high school, a little bit beforehand, I was exposed to wrestling early on in like the late 2000s. I vaguely remember a pay-per-view in WWE featuring Kane Unmasked, I believe. It was an Unforgiven somewhere early 2000s. His face was like the front red poster for it. And that's kind of where I first started getting into it. This was I'd visited a friend in primary school, and we just like hang out and watch it. I think it belonged to his older brother, which is probably something that happens to a lot of people. Anyway, skip ahead. I end up in year 7, and this is where roughly my real interest in wrestling kind of starts. At the time, I was hanging out with a friend of mine called Jacob, another friend of mine, Luke, who is still friends with me to this day. That's like a decade at this point. It's crazy. Anyway, we used to watch wrestling. We used to get it on pay-per-view, the classic where you have to pay like $30 to get this 3-hour thing that is available for like one day. So a friend of mine who had Foxtel, which is like our version of cable, I think, we paid for it, and we got, what was it? It was Impact Battle for Glory. Now, we didn't know about like different companies and different organizations at that point. I was like, this is just wrestling. It's wrestling on TV, whatever. And that was some good wrestling. Like we loved this. Mind you, we were like 14 at best, and we just like pay these pay-per-views, split it between us, hang out in his mum's lounge room, and just watch wrestling. And then where that goes from there, I do have notes this time, so I'm learning. Where that goes from there is to backyard wrestling. My friend Jacob absolutely loved backyard wrestling. Just like the idea that you could just use random hassled shit in your backyard and wrestle was amazing. So we used to watch backyard wrestling. We could hire it from the video store. Oh god, I miss video stores. And we used to do that. We used to backyard wrestle in like the loosest possible sense. Like we'd lay out like spare mattresses, put down some pieces of wood on them, lay top over that, and then just like practice moves against each other, like suplexes, German suplexes. After a while, we like added in a ladder so that we'd have like a ladder next to it, and then we'd jump off that onto each other. That's where my friend Luke came into it. So then it'd be like a 3-way, and yeah, that was wildly good. First recommendation from roughly that era as it happens. It's either, I think it's Bound for Glory. I want to say 2006. It was an excellent match. Probably one of the best matches, actually. Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels. Incredible match. Can't recommend it enough. If you as someone who likes older style wrestling, much different to the modern, go check out that one. It's available. It's available. You'll find it. Anyway, so after a while doing that kept going, but eventually life got in the way. I started looking for girls, stuff like that, and I kind of moved away from wrestling. And it wouldn't be until like only a few years ago now that I got back into it, which is an interesting process. There was a YouTube channel called What Culture Wrestling. It still exists, different owners. Anyway, they had gone out and started a promotion called WCPW. And I don't remember how, but me and my mate Denny, Luke, as he is Luke from before, Denny now. So Denny and I used to watch WCPW, and we'd get their pay-per-views, became part of like their support team thing where you like donate each week and you get extra content. Because we just loved that. I thought it was so good, and the storylines were really, really interesting. This then led us to NXT, and this is the black and gold NXT. Um, when I first started watching it, wasn't when it began. I think I first came into it just as Kevin Owens turned on his best friend Sami Zayn, and the ensuing feuds going forward from there. So quite some time now, but definitely not the beginning. I remember that Adrian Neville and Bo Dallas both had like apparently amazing runs there, and I've just never gone back and looked at them. That was before my time. Got to stop doing that noise. Um, this is when I started inviting other friends of mine who were interested in wrestling, and it became a ritual every like Tuesday or Thursday. Bunch of people would come around to my house. I was delivering pizzas and going to uni at the time. So I'd deliver pizzas, I'd knock off at like 9, come home, they'd meet me there, I'd bring the pizzas, go figure. And it would be pizza, watch wrestling, would catch up on like everything that happened in the last week and live NXT, or as best we could watch live. And wow. Again, that was some of the best times of my life. We used to, when there were pay-per-views, we'd do it on a weekend as well. So it'd be like extra content. Second recommendation is going to come from around here, and I think everyone who knows it would already agree. That would be DIY, the team of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, versus the Revival, now FTR on AEW, with Cash Wheeler, Dax Harwood, and some people would say that those two had a great match between the two of each other, and they did. But my personal favorite was the three-way with AOP, Authors of Pain, back when they were supported by Paul Ellering. Now, that for me was an excellent match. You had the Revival, who were a very throwback style of wrestling, as they said, no flips, just fists. And then contrasting them, you had, you know, the indie darling style of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, all heart, all effort, just keep going. And holy shit, if Johnny Gargano doesn't look like he just had the shit beat out of him like half of his life. Best underdog out there, I'd probably say. Maybe even too much, but that's neither here nor there. And then you had AOP. Now, AOP they both of them, they're like 6'5", built like a brick shit house, huge dudes. And they had like this ominous manager, Paul Ellering, who was amazing in his time and then has like come back as this like old, almost villain with so much knowledge, like a fallen hero. And that I thought was so cool. It had such an interesting dynamic because it was like these two smaller teams trying to overpower the big one, but like they can't work together either. And for me, it was fantastic. Cannot recommend enough. From here, we start moving further across the seas because I remember an interesting day when I was at work and I heard that some guy, Dave Meltzer, had given this match 6 stars. I thought that doesn't mean anything. Someone's like, well, it only goes up to 5, and he's been doing it for 20 years. He's never gone above that. Or if he has, it was once. I thought, okay, all right, you've got me. I'm into wrestling at the moment. I'd love to know what this wrestling is. What is this best match of all time kind of thing talking about? Needless to say, it was Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, number 1. And oh boy, did that not disappoint. Next thing I know, I'm all over fucking Daily Motion, Vimeo, whatever, searching out single matches of just this guy versus this guy and that guy versus that guy. I wanted more Okada. And then I learned of other wrestlers and I was like, well, I need more of this, I need more of that. And also kind of opened me up to the Meltzer star ratings. And look, maybe I don't agree with all of them, but look, if you watch a match that he gave 5 stars, it's not going to be a bad match, right? Like, it's going to be something good. So that's how I kind of roughly use it as an entry point or a gauge, and then you make your own opinions afterwards. Anyway, so we were then going through each wrestling, and I'd be like, watch NXT, and then I would just I'd be like, oh, here's an indie match, here's something from Rev Pro, here's something from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and just blindsiding everyone with all this wild shit. Which brings me to the third recommendation. This, if you want to see what it can look like when two wrestlers go to town on each other, hell for leather. 5-star classic. It's like 15 minutes, including entrances and outrances. Shibata versus Tomohiro Ishii. Holy shit, what a match. Like, I've never seen two dudes beat the heck out of each other so much. And I think, weirdly, you could kind of see... You can see where it verges away from UFC. In UFC, your objective is to put your opponent down. It's not to hurt them. You just have to hurt them to put them down, right? Wrestling doesn't have that. Wrestling is about not trying to hurt your opponent while trying to tell this interesting story. More on that in a minute. But in doing so, you're actively trying to keep your opponent in the match. So while these two guys are beating the living heck out of each other, and I mean that in the most legitimate sense of the words, watch it, you will see, they're doing it in a manner that's sustainable, at least temporarily. So you get the entertainment part of a fight and the intensity of your UFC style match. For me, UFC ain't it, Chief. I need that storyline. Need that direction. Fighting for the sake of fighting just isn't enough. So, this then leads me to the next thing. Suddenly, the indies aren't the indies anymore. They're becoming AEW. Oh my god. AEW. Wow. What a promotion. Holy shit. They bring out so much interesting new content, and I'll be frank, some of it isn't the best. Some of it is. It's all over the shop. Not to say that the low parts are as low as the high parts are high, just that it's made by humans, and humans can't be perfect all the time. So, yeah, it does have some duds here and there, but my god, since they kind of went at it for like last 2 years, give or take, it has been incredible. I think I've watched almost every episode, or if not, I watched the highlights of all the episodes I haven't watched. I love catching up on this each week. Me and one of my partners actively watch it every week. We're currently enjoying the beautiful feud of Wardlow and MJF, and I can't wait for him to get his head caved in. Following that, this leads me to a fourth recommendation. I apparently just can't count. So, fourth recommendation, let's go. Who is it? Omega Pac Dynamite. Now, Pac, or Neville, as he used to be called in WWE, is probably one of the best wrestlers in the world. No, probably the best wrestler in the world. Definitely top 5, I would say. Maybe later I'll do a video talking about who my top 5 are. But the bastard Pac, there's nothing he can't do. The match with Kenny Omega is unbelievable. Kenny is someone who's actually just on a similar level to Pac. And between them, they put on an absolute barn burner of a show. Cannot recommend enough. Go check it out. Find it online. It's not going to be hard. Get on it. So, that's kind of been my journey, very roughly, through wrestling. Through everything about it that I love. And how I've kind of gotten here. But I haven't really talked about why. You know, it's why not football? Why not baseball? Okay, look, well, baseball, I've never watched. Football, it's alright. Doesn't have the story. So, you might have kind of guessed then that the thing that draws me into wrestling, storylines. There's something about the storytelling you get in wrestling that transcends film for me in a lot of ways. Film has the benefit of being able to rinse and repeat, try and try again, get the right take, put them all together, make the right film, and you get a lot of opportunities. Unless it's improvised, of course. And that's where wrestling kind of comes into it, because wrestling is improvised. I mean, yes, it's a scripted television series. That's absolutely true. The outcomes are predetermined, usually. But that doesn't mean that, like, all 800... hyperbolic. All 50-odd moves that are used throughout the match are exactly da-da-da-da-da-da that you would in a script. No, they're not. You might have the intro, you might have a couple of major points, you might have an ending, and those things are pre-planned. Everything else in the middle, these two actors are making it up as they go along. And first, that's an incredible thing. You do not know what they're going to do next, because neither do they, you know? And the storytelling that you can then involve in this because of its physical characteristics The fact that you can have a hero's journey and see the hero have to fight their way through it. You get to see literally how they fight. To me, that's amazing because it's real, unlike film, weirdly. You know, if you did more biopics on UFC as an example, those would be very, very similar. You could probably have your various UFC characters who talk about their process leading up to it and then just show the fight and be like, that's everything, this is the moment. Um, Wrestling, though, has all that inbuilt into it. It has these characters, it has their fears, their desires, their personalities, all these amazing things that allow you to invest in them and then get excited when they win, because that's kind of the point. They win or they lose, and you are elated or distraught. It's amazing. It is also a form of physical theater, as I mentioned. It's improvised. They train a series of moves, they plan out how they're going to do them, they practice them regularly, and then when they get to it, and you can again find clips of this wherever, in the match, they call the shots to one another as the match happens. You know, one will turn to the other and be like, "All right, headlock off to the ropes," and so that person's like, "Cool, get him in a headlock," and then they get pushed off into the ropes, and they make it up. It's all about communication between these people. Even more so when you have multi-man matches, like four people all improvising in one ring, physically, not just vocally. How hard do you think that could be? And again, much like other things, combat turns on, the characters don't stop. You know, you still have to perform throughout that. Perform that you're in pain, perform that you're angry, perform that you're excited, whatever it is. It's all that you're still conveying this character on a screen. The final two things about wrestling that really speak to me, the violence. I'll be honest, the more violent it gets, I'm not going to say the more excited I get about it, but nevertheless, it makes the stakes feel more real. If this guy's losing a match, yeah, okay, that's bad and I want him to win. If this guy's losing a match and his head's busted open and blood's pouring down his face, I'm like, I'm worried for this man. And then if that guy can build up the intestinal fortitude, reserves of strength, get himself together, get back in the fight and win, holy shit. He's got blood pouring out of his head. He was nearly dead and now he's the champion. You can't tell that story in real time anywhere else. It's incredible. And lastly, it's kind of secondary almost, but for me, commentary. It is this voice that brings you in. Obviously, you're not in the fight, but if the commentary is right for what's going on, you can be. They keep up with speed and pacing, tell you what's going on so you're aware of the positions and how everything's translated around one another. And frankly, the American style of commentary is brilliant. It is designed for entertainment, and entertained I am. I was literally Googling different commentators the other day just because I wanted to be like, oh, where's this guy at? Where's that guy at? You know, Mauro Ronaldo, where's he? What's he doing? Why isn't he commentating on the wrestling I want to watch? All these things. And again, if you look up Jim Ross's best calls WWE, you're going to find out why. He brings you in. Mauro Ronaldo brings you in. These amazing commentary that can just make you feel what's going on, make you understand what people are thinking. All these things help immerse you further into this physical story that is being told between heroes and villains. And that's amazing. That's my favorite kind of story. Now, obviously, this is a very one-sided account. This is everything I love about wrestling. And there are a lot of things I don't love about wrestling, let me tell you. But this isn't the video for that. This is a show, and I just wanted to tell everybody kind of like why maybe you might want to be excited in wrestling, what I love about it, and just those 4 recommendations as to what you might want to look into if you think you're curious. Just for those who've got this far and can't bother rewinding, Kenny Omega Bastard Pack on AEW Dynamite. Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Bound for Glory 2006. We have the Revival versus DIY versus AOP NXT TakeOver. And I believe that the last one is Tomohiro Ishii versus Shibata and a 5-star classic. Cannot recommend it enough. Thank you for listening to me ramble about wrestling, Frank. It means a lot. I hope you're having a good time out there, whatever you're doing. I'd love to hear about it someday. Until next week, see you next Tuesday.